one of the guest speakers that you guys have been asking for. Someone who has been in the industry, who has done tech. So please ask questions, and I'm going to let Karen go from here.
Stand up. Stand up. You're just back from spring break, right? You know why I don't do PowerPoint? Because you're going to tune in right here. This is not a one-way data dump where I just tell you my life story and you sit and spectate and kind of do some of your social media stuff on the side. We're going to have a little bit of interaction. And it starts with this. Every life has a story, and that story includes your story. So I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them the most important part of your life story that's going to drive your career. Go for it. You have 1 minute. What's the most important part of your story that's driving your life career? All right, who has one to share? Tell me something about your life story that's driving what you want to do for your career. Somebody raises their hand or I start calling on people. That's how this works. By the way, I'm not stealing for a hobby, so I'll get louder and bolder unless you want to volunteer. Excellent. You in the white hat, what was something from your life story that's informing what you want to be when you grow up? I know it is. So's being an entrepreneur, but here we are. Anything about your life. So what did you want to be when you grew up when you were 4 years old?
I wanted to be a football player when I was like 4.
Okay. And what did you want to be when you were 14?
Millionaire.
A millionaire. And what do you want to be now?
The same thing.
A millionaire. All right. Why is that?
Money drives happiness.
Money drives happiness. That's a fascinating theory. What about you? Something from your life that's driving what you want to be when you grow up.
My dad, he makes a lot of money, and I want to make more.
All right. Awesome. Someone who's not motivated by money. Yes, you.
I have a calling to do architecture, I feel, so that's what I'm working towards, getting licensed so I can help build specifically temples.
Awesome. Amazing. Who's got another one? Back row. Hoodie. What about you? Yes, you.
Which one you guys?
Something from your life story that's driving what you want to be when you grow up, or your career choice or your major.
It's another money one.
Another money one. Awesome. Sit down, money people. We're going to talk about how entrepreneurship is not always a path to making money, but we'll get there eventually. All right. You can sit down. So this is what I think about. You know, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up? When I was a kid, it started out very young with I wanted to be a teacher. Now, it's very unfortunate that I have one brother. He was 4 years younger than me. He was, in fact, an entrepreneurship major right here at Ball State University. And because he was 4 years younger, he had to be the student in my class. Rough gig, right? When you're playing school and making him be a part of that. And as my life started to unfold, by the time I got just a little bit older, we were very fortunate, this grandfather that you just talked about, our grandparents would take all of their grandchildren for 1 week every summer without our parents. Can you imagine how fun that was? Do any of you have fun grandparents? Or did have? Yeah, so imagine you can stay up as late as you want, eat whatever you want, have lots of fun, run around. And during that period of time, I was the oldest of the 6 grandchildren. And I would spend that week without the parents because they would come to pick us up on the final weekend. I would spend that time writing a play and casting my cousins in roles and running rehearsals. So we would put on a show for our parents when they came to pick us up. And as I carried some of that forward later into my life, one of the common threads throughout my life, and I encourage you to look at yours and we'll do an activity with this later, is that notion of storytelling. I always loved to read books. I've always been fascinated about people's stories. What is it that makes you tick? And I've always loved to write stories and to share stories with other people. And when I think about some other true North Stars throughout the course of my life that remained consistent, another one was being kind of the gold star kid. And I don't know if that means anything to you, but some of you might have growing up had the kind of household or experience where someone told you there was a certain list of things you had to do, right? Was that chores? Did anybody have this? Chores, a certain list of expected behaviors. Maybe you were expected to get a certain kind of grades. And with that usually came some kind of reward, right? or flip side, if you didn't do it, some kind of punishment. So I say I grew up as the kid that loved to kind of please people who were setting those standards, whether that was parents or teachers or someone else. Now, by the time I got here to Ball State, my major, I started out in elementary education, and it took one whole semester of me working in the Muncie schools to be like, no, this is not happening. So I changed my major, and my roommate likes to joke, we lived in Botsford Hall, that she was an architecture major, and so I was like, okay, I won't be an architecture major. Like the next page started with B, I was like, business, that sounds great. So I did an international business major. Do we have, is anybody, this is probably none of those here at the moment, international business major and telecommunications across the street. What is a core, oh, it's called something different now, media, some whatever. What's the core, though, of doing TCOM in that building across the street, right? Storytelling. So now I learned about news storytelling, right? And producing shows where other people told stories and we extracted information. So I did that TCOM in international business, minored in Spanish, and had on-campus jobs. And so I kind of took that formula that I had learned my whole life. I love to storytell. And I love to, check things off lists and get things done and all the wonderful approval that goes with that. So I'm in the honors college and I'm taking 23 hours a semester and working an on-campus job and smiling and getting it done the whole time. How many of you have jobs at the moment? Awesome, yeah, big chunk of the class. And so as part of that, one of the jobs that I had in undergrad in telecommunications at the time was working for a professor, and he administered a survey every year to radio and television news directors across the country. And my job, glamorous as it sounds, was to call and follow up with people who did not respond to that survey and say, hey, did you get it? And if you haven't sent it back, could I go through the questions with you over the phone? Or send out another copy of the survey, because we wanted to turn what we were studying into articles that he would publish in a magazine. And once a year I would co-write with him what that looked like. So at that time, my grand aspiration in life as I was coming up through my undergrad, I thought when I left I was going to work for Nielsen Ratings. Have any of you heard of Nielsen? So Nielsen, right, is the governing body that essentially rates the popularity of all the shows you watch, and that sets the budget and prices for advertisers, right? So it costs more money to run a commercial in the Super Bowl than it does on a show on Tuesday night that doesn't have very good viewership because more people watch, right? Well, unfortunately, I wasn't the most exceptional researcher, apparently, because I had failed to look up the fact that Nielsen was headquartered in Iowa. I don't know if anyone here is from Iowa. It did not sound particularly appealing to me as an undergraduate to finish my career here and move to Iowa. So I started thinking about what is another life plan that I could pursue. And along the way, as I was finishing my degrees here at Ball State, I came to kind of a crossroads in my life. And my plan was, finish and, I was engaged to be married. And I had a full ride scholarship to get my master's degree at Southern Illinois University in beautiful Carbondale, Illinois, which I'm guessing is sort of like the Iowa of Southern Illinois. So maybe not that much better, but the person I was engaged to was going to get his master's degree there as well. And people often ask me, how is it that with this international business major and this telecommunications major and Spanish minor, and I lived in Peru, South America for a while and volunteered with people, how did I end up in technology? I got into technology the old-fashioned way, as a runaway bride. Yes, I called off my wedding about 45 days before it was happening. I canceled my entire honeymoon plans. I sold my wedding dress, like secondhand store, and booked a ticket to backpack Europe for a month with 2 of my friends. This is everything unpredictable for a straight-A student with a couple majors in honors college and summa cum laude and all the stuff you're supposed to do, right? So I backpacked Europe for a month, came back, and figured that I probably should not go to the same master's degree program as my now jilted, engaged person, and instead was a nanny for the summer here in Muncie, which was glamorous in every way that you can imagine as I'm describing it. And I got a phone call from one day from a woman who was working at the Center for Information and Communication Sciences at the time. I had known her from my undergrad jobs because I had planned a few events with her. And she said, one of your friends from the College of Business, who happened to be a volleyball player, just dropped out of his full ride master's degree program because he got an offer to play volleyball in Europe. And he realized he could always get a master's degree. He won't always be able to play volleyball in Europe. So there is now one full ride graduate assistantship open. Print out your resume, put on a suit, and come here and interview to get a master's degree in information and communication sciences. That is correct, friends. Technology sounded better than marriage to me. Also, other problem, my resume wasn't that up to date and I didn't have a suit. Quickly rectified that in 24 hours, went and interviewed for a graduate assistantship, got it, which is really a testament to the power of why you should have great relationships with people. And when I started, everyone thought because I had a TCOM undergrad that meant like technology. So they would ask me questions. I'm like, no, I was the person that's like, the weather is looking bad. Take an umbrella today. And now back to you in the studio. That was my version of tech and TCOM, right? Well, what ended up happening is that 11-month program put me on a path to going into a career that is really a lot about storytelling and discovery. So I am curious, how many of you have done this assessment in here? Was it called ELA or something like that? What is your style? Did the entrepreneurship people have done it? What was do you remember what your top one was? Do you remember anything from it? Do you know the assessment I'm talking about?
I didn't know the assessment.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Does anybody remember theirs that took it? Interestingly, it seems to be a very high impact activity, so your professor gets huge marks for driving that home and reinforcing it. Rubric note to self. But mine was evangelist, right? So thinking about storytelling really at its core. I took the assessment because your professor gave me that homework, who is in Disney World, right? As I understand it at the moment. Okay, so evangelist was mine. So I was, even then, if you think about that, writing and storytelling and TCOM, building this pathway into a career. And what's interesting about the world that you're living in right now is every single one of you has an opportunity to take all these little bits and pieces and turn it into something. And it doesn't all come together all at once, which is kind of what I discovered. Because along the way, my first role when I left my master's program was doing project management at AT&T, and very quickly I went into sales. When you think about it, sales is just about being a very persuasive storyteller, right? You've got a very specific outcome in mind from that story that you're telling to someone. So in my case, I did sales, multiple sales roles, got recruited to go to a tech company called Cisco, where I led even bigger salespeople and even bigger teams. Now, if you remember that gold star conversation I was mentioning earlier, where it was all about pleasing, performing, and perfecting, right? And doing that all seemingly effortlessly. When I went into my professional work environment, I tried that exact same thing. So I kind of studied the people around me because I did not grow up with any female role models who had jobs that were anything other than a stay-at-home mom, a teacher, or a nurse, all of which are worthwhile. They just weren't my path. So I didn't know any female executives or workers in other categories. And so I went into the workplace and I thought, I'll just do what got me this far. Do all those little people-pleasing behaviors you did as a kid to make your parents and your teachers happy or whoever your guardians were or are. And then I came to Ball State and I did that. I did a lot of things. I got good grades. I was in some student organizations. That was awesome. I started doing that at work because I started studying people around me. I was like, these people who look really successful, what's amazing is they seem to say yes to everything and they always deliver and they make it look so easy, right? Like it's no big deal. And then they get rewarded with things that sounded really appealing to me, like pay, more pay, promotions, and access to usually powerful looking people. So I thought, I'll just do what they do. It looks like they say yes, they do a lot of things, they deliver all the things, and that is awesome. And that was actually going along really well, and I was getting a number of promotions and having success for whatever you want to deem that to be. And when I got into that role at Cisco with a massive team and got about 18 months into it, some strange things started to happen. Started gaining a little weight. But I thought, hey, I'm in sales. We're out all the time with customers. We're eating and drinking, right? You're not usually eating like a salad and some water when you're out with a customer and you're trying to get them to spend millions of dollars, right? You're like having the wine and the appetizer and the dessert, right? Then I would skip my workout in the morning because I needed to do the work I didn't get done from the night before. And then I would start to notice, gosh, I'm so tired. Then I would think, well, I'm sleeping less because now I'm trying to make up the work and do the workout. There was an absolute attention-getting moment where I go to pick up my mobile device to call my brother, and I can't remember his name. And I'm about 31 years old at the time. Can't remember his name. I have one brother. I talk to him every week. By process of elimination, I had to pull up in my phone. We had the same last name. So I had to take a scan of every relative I had in there with the same last name until I could figure out which person he was. And I was like, something is not right. Right? Something is not right. And so it might surprise you to discover, looking at me now, that put me on a path to 3.5 years of major medical misdiagnosis, during which time my hair fell out, my skin turned gray, I gained 55 pounds, and I did not have a baby. And one day I looked in the mirror, and my eyes were literally a different color. And no one knew what was wrong with me. So teams and teams of doctors. And I kept working and getting tests. And in all of that, crushing fatigue, no one knows what's wrong. I was taking about 3 juice glasses a day full of pills just to keep going because all my organs were shutting down. I never missed one day of work for being sick. How many of you, raise your hand if you think that sounds crazy. Sounds crazy, right? And yet we all get tempted to do that, which is, even in your context now, there are some things that are important to you. There are some things that matter. I think about them as your values. And when we live outside of those for an extended period of time, or try to be someone we're not, or try to take a job we don't really want, it takes a toll. So in my case, people often ask, because after 3.5 years, I finally found a doctor that figured out what was wrong with me. And people always want to know because they want to make sure they do not catch it. You don't want to catch what I had, right? I had something called DDT pesticide poisoning. So pesticide poisoning. And here's what I find so interesting about that. First of all, I physically had pesticide pulsing through my body that was destroying all of my organs. Also, I probably got so sick and stayed so sick for so long because of an immense amount of stress and a toxic set of beliefs that I was carrying about what success was and what I was willing to do to get it. For some of you who are entrepreneurship majors, and I will talk a little bit about moving into this entrepreneurial world that I am in, nothing is more tempting in the world of entrepreneurship than working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, compromising every aspect of your health and your relationships in order to turn this idea and this fledgling business into something that makes money. What I learned the hard way is that your body will always give you a bill for how you treat it. Maybe not right now, but it will catch up with you at some point. I thought I could outrun it. I didn't need a lot of sleep. I had a lot of energy. It always catches up with you in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's you lose relationships because you're working all the time. Maybe in my case, it was losing my health. And I learned the hard way, truly, if you have your health, you have everything. And so that became kind of a turning point in my story about thinking differently about what matters most and thinking about my values. So at that point, of course, what do you think my most important goal was at that point? Get healthy, right? I wanted to be healthy enough to enjoy my life, and I thought, okay, if that means I can't volunteer for a very worthwhile cause or I can't take on the extra project at work, so be it. I want to be healthy enough to enjoy my life and to be able to remember my own brother's name, right? And so I started making some changes. And if I knew that my top goal was to get healthy, I knew I needed to let go of some things to make space for that goal. And for the first time in my life, I had such a clear set of priorities, like, will this decision or spending time with this person move me closer to that goal of being healthy or move me further away from that goal of being healthy? So what I want you to do is pause right now, and I want you to think about right now, what is the top priority in your life? Your number one goal. It might just be surviving to the end of the semester. I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, just one of you is going to ask, what's your top goal right now or priority? And just hold space for the person to answer and then take turns. Take a minute. Think for a minute, then share with the other person.
What's your top goal right now?
My top goal right now is to improve my physical strength. So I just hired a strength and conditioning coach because I've really never lifted weights before in my life. And it's like, you know, I want to be able to lift heavy stuff. Yeah. So it's like my next goal of something I'm trying. What about you?
Finishing my thesis and getting funding to help build the cultural center in Honduras.
Yay, I love that. That's an awesome goal. All right, who has one you'd like to share? What's a top goal? What's a top goal or priority? We had one right here. I'll pick my partner who has a fantastic one.
My top goal right now is to finish my thesis and design a cultural center in Honduras and get funding for it.
So to finish his thesis and design and build a cultural center and get funding to do that in Honduras. How about that? Somebody else? Somebody from the side. You, Bass Pro Shop.
I just said like graduating because this is my last semester.
Congratulations, that's a worthwhile goal. What about over here? All right, Ohio State. The Ohio State.
Just be successful.
What does that mean to you?
So I race dirt bikes and I want to go pro.
Go pro in racing dirt bikes. How about that? Now for all of you, I want you to think about that top goal for a moment. Raise your hand if more than half of your time in any given day is spent on that top goal or priority. Probably if it's graduating, it is. For how many of you is it less than 25%? Yeah. And that's okay. We have these moments in time where things get a little bit out of balance. And in that case that I was talking about with getting healthy, I was willing to make changes. By the way, it took about 5 more years of treatments for me to get to a completely clean bill of health, which I'm grateful to have, at which point I was able to shift to a different priority. And something, after going through a myriad more roles at Cisco, the technology company, I then went to Salesforce. And after being at Salesforce for 7 years, I now work at a tech startup that was started by someone I worked with at Salesforce. And I will tell you that one of the most critically important factors for me that I thought about after leaving 3 very big companies where my paycheck cleared every 2 weeks without me even thinking about it, which is not something that happens in the world of entrepreneurship, what I come back to is especially in the world of entrepreneurship, especially for those of you who want to go on to be leaders or to pitch projects that are important to you, it's critically important to look for values alignment and priorities alignment. And that starts with knowing your own values and your own value. One of the reasons that I'm grateful to be at the Engineered Innovation Group, and for those of you who are wondering what that is, we build software as a service products and services for other companies. We're doing a lot with artificial intelligence, if any of you are into that category. But essentially, we meet with people who have an idea, either for a business they want to start that's based on technology, or they're a large existing company or a healthcare system, and they want to improve their software or their use of AI in their organization. And so we build and deploy that for them. And in some cases, if it's another startup founder, we put together their whole go-to-market playbook and pitch deck to help them go raise money. And so I think about this whole life cycle of what we do, of going from ideas to insights to something you can go implement. Coming back to values alignment, one of the most important aspects of setting those priorities and feeling good about the places that you work or even people you spend time with here in your everyday life is knowing your values, which is why I was ecstatic to discover something called the stress-free experiment. Have any of you, does this sound good? Stress-free? Yeah, sounds kind of appealing. What's great is you'll want to listen if you have your AirPods in or you're typing something else because you're going to do this, so you're going to need this information. The stress-free experiment goes like this. There was a group of researchers at Stanford University. There's some smart people there, right? The researchers at Stanford University were observing groups of students who were reporting a high degree of stress due to feeling uncertain about the future and unsure they were going to be able to get everything done to capitalize on this wonderful future that comes at the end of a promise of a college education. And so what they did with the students was they gave them a writing assignment. They said, over the next break, each one of you are going to spend 10 minutes every day with a physical pen and a physical piece of paper. And you are going to just write down for 10 minutes whatever's on your mind. It doesn't matter what it is. We're not going to grade spelling, grammar, content, nothing. Just 10 minutes a day, write. Then, like any good scientist, they extracted a small control group. And they said, for you, though, we have a special assignment. You are going to write about your top value and how your top value shows up in your everyday life. And off they went. Give me an example of a value. Do you know what a value is? I think about it as your top priority at any given time. So a value could be like well-being. Yes, give me a value. Honesty, that's a great value. Yes. What else?
Integrity.
Integrity, that's a great one. What else? Some of you picked career success already. So relationships, absolutely. Family, friends. What are other examples? Yes.
Stability.
Yes, stability. It could be your faith. It could be making an impact. It could be inspiring people. Many different values. So what they did was these students came back and they studied them for the rest of the semester and for the next 2 years. And here's what they discovered. The students who had written about their values even one time for 10 minutes, they could statistically measure that those people outperformed their peer group who just wrote about whatever came to their minds. They demonstrated lower degrees of burnout, higher health, higher resiliency. They got better jobs. They overall performed better in life. They went on to repeat this experiment thousands and thousands and thousands of times with entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between, and the results were always the same. When you are clear about your top value and how it shows up in your everyday life, you are more resilient, more adaptive, healthier, and by every metric, more successful. That's why we're going to take a few minutes right now. You can get out your devices, or if you have a pen and paper, it's better that way, but I'm suspecting at your age and stage, none of you have that. So pull out whatever device you want, and you are going to spend 5 minutes writing about your top value and how your top value shows up in your everyday life, or what you're going to do to help it show up in your everyday life. You will be debriefing with other people afterwards, so you really are going to have to think about this. Cool? Your time starts now. And if you're a leadership major, this is especially important because leaders need to lead from their values. If you're an entrepreneurship major, you're going to need values alignment with the other people you need as your stakeholders. So there is use, regardless of your degree pursuit here. You can also write down other ways it could show up more, other people you know who embody this value that you could learn something from. Top value and how that value shows up in your everyday life. All right, stand up again. So your activity now is you're going to look at the person next to you. I'm going to pick this nice person with a beautiful sweatshirt right here, and I'm going to say to you, what is your top value? Family. Why does that matter to you so much?
It's the foundation of where I'm at right now.
Because that's the foundation of where you're at right now. Okay. I've got to go. San Francisco on your laptop back there. Are you from San Francisco? Oh, nice. Okay, my brother and sister-in-law and 2.5-year-old nephew live there, so I'm somewhat partial to it. What is your top value?
I'd say family as well.
Family. Why does that matter to you so much?
Well, I'm from a big family, and that's kind of, driven. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and so, it's more of a reminder every time I see them how important it is and how, you build your basis off that foundation in life. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What about you back here with the glasses? Ooh, hello. Hi. How are you? What's your top value? To be successful. Why does that matter to you so much?
I've been working hard. College is 4 years.
And I'm just repeating it, to be successful, and why that matters so much is because she's been working so hard these past 4 years that she's ready to get to the payoff point for all that hard work. All right, that is what you are going to do. You're going to ask the person next to you, what is your top value? Then you will listen to them like I did. Then you will say, why does that matter to you so much? Then you will switch. Then you will move around the room and find someone new to ask that question to. Are you ready? Job is to ask 2 questions. What are the 2 questions? What is your top value? What's the second question? Why does that matter to you so much? Go for it. Thank you. And my top value would be impact. And the reason that matters to me so much is that I feel like I'm at a stage in my life where I can pay some things forward and help other people reach their goals and be successful, and that matters a lot to me right now. How was that experience? How was that experience?
Great.
What was great about it? Besides getting to stand up and move and talk about what I asked you to or something else, what else is good about it?
It's just nice to hear what other people value and why.
Yeah, isn't it nice just to listen and you don't have to give them feedback, you don't have to offer judgment? That's a great one. Yeah, just nice to hear about what somebody else cares about, right? What else did you observe?
Talk to someone who has pretty much said like similar things as me.
Yes, you find that you have things in common with people, and sometimes why it matters maybe is a little bit different, but it's interesting when you discover, hey, we have a same core value, even if it shows up a little bit differently, right? Or the reason behind it. What else? Yes?
There's like a level of like vulnerability.
Yeah.
And like you don't get to really experience that with strangers or like people you don't know very well very often. So
Yeah, easy way to do vulnerability because you both know you're going to do it. And as I always like to say, there's no values judgment on your values. The other person's just there to listen, right? What else? How did it feel to have somebody just hold space for you to say it out loud? Without any judgment or feedback or like, you know what you should do with that value, right? This is what I think about. And one of the most important things that I have learned over time is that our most valuable relationships come from an understanding of each other's values. And so often it can be hard to ask someone for help, you know, on our top goal or on the way to our journey. When you understand someone else's values and why it matters so much to them, we're all motivated to help someone else, right? Live that value or be successful at what matters. And I always say, whenever you get stuck, this could even be on a team project that you have to work on, the dreaded team project, right? When you are clashing with someone or they're pushing all of your buttons, stop and ask them for a minute, what's your top value? What's your top priority inside of this project? Why does it matter to you so much? I do this in business all the time. I do it with our founder. I do it with our customers. Because oftentimes when we really have a clash with someone, it's because we're bumping up against someone else's deeply held value or belief. And simply asking that question of what is your top value or top priority in this moment and why does that matter to you so much gives you a lot richer context in 2 very simple questions. That didn't take very much time, did it? To discover some new things about people around you, some of whom you see on a fairly regular basis. The other piece too that I think is critically important is it's always important to know your top value at any given time. And I think about it this way, there's all these definitions of burnout, right? And you have your own version of it here, right? You've got jobs, you've got assignments, there's lots of things going on. Some of you are looking toward interviewing for jobs, so there's a whole other set of responsibilities. I think about burnout as living outside of your values for an extended period of time. So if your top goal is, I want to graduate and I want to find a job and be successful, or I want to be awesome at racing dirt bikes or build a cultural center in Honduras, you could work a lot of hours doing that and it will feel great because it's aligned with your top value or your care about. Now, if I were to take that on, it's not my top care about at the moment, so it'd probably be exhausting, right? These are great clues here, and when you get out into your jobs of, if something is really, 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 really draining you, or someone is really pushing your buttons, there's probably a values clash. So when I think about this sort of world I'm in now of entrepreneurship, it's a topic that comes up all the time is values and priorities. Because there's always one more thing we could be doing or trying or something we could be doing for a client. And at the end of the day, we can only do well for the people we're serving if we're doing well ourselves. I'm going to pause and take some questions from all of you. Yes?
What do you do when like your top values are conflicting?
What do you do when your top values are conflicting? I would get more curious and think about why is that?
Like, I'll give like an example.
Please do.
Like, it is like college, we're all trying to we're all struggling.
Of course.
But like, how do you like set up those responsibilities of like paying your bills and like doing all that but then like still prioritizing like your mental health or like your work-life balance?
Yes. This is a great question. So when you feel like there are lots of pressures and things to do, you know, you have bills to pay and jobs to find and papers that are due and, you know, tests to take, and you're also realizing that you need to make time for yourself, what I try to do is think in smaller increments. I think very oftentimes we think and act in terms of what I call the grand gesture. I'm so burned out, I need a week of spring break. My bill is massive and my credit card debt is mounting. I need to figure out how to pay off the whole thing. What changes is when we do the doable. I call it the 5-minute fix. So if I'm thinking to myself, I am so stressed out, I have so many things to do, I will take 5 minutes and just take a walk, breathe, like do something, you know, pet your, you know, dog, cat, whatever that looks like for you. But a 5-minute fix where you go, for like 5 minutes, I'm going to suspend reality and do something for my own self-care. Those little moments will do more to restore you because they're doable and you can do them. And if it's you're in massive credit card debt or student loan debt, you know, pay $10 on it, you know, every month. It's just about a little bit of consistency and carving out small spaces. You know, take 5 minutes away from doing social media, do some breathing instead. So I just think try to get smaller. Because if you already feel like I have too many things to do, adding self-care on top of it feels like, well, I'll never have time to work out for 2 hours a day or whatever. It's like, I don't know, walk for 10 minutes. Start there. So start small. And then it kind of builds momentum and you figure out what's really effective because it'll be different for everybody. Yeah. Yeah, they've shown, in fact, Ariana Huffington with her business Thrive, they did some studies. And even 60 seconds of focused breathing will bring down your stress and cortisol levels. Like they can actually measure the hormone changes from just 60 seconds. And I try to remind myself of that too when I'm even running between meetings. I think 60 seconds, I can take 2 deep breaths. And I do kind of feel better. Yes?
Obviously you're like very driven and very focused. So when you were sick and you like had to take that time to like prioritize your health, how did you combat like fighting with yourself on like, no, I should be working or like I should be doing this, but like I need to take care of, like how did you overcome that?
Yes, and you used the one word in that sentence multiple times that I realized I had to take out of my vocabulary, and it's the word should. I don't know how many times you used it. To me, the word should is a universal indication I am working on someone else's agenda and someone else's values and not mine. So if I think to myself, I should call my mom, but I really don't want to, that's like I'm working on her expectation of my life, right? Or I should, whatever, pick up meditation. I should write one more paper, whatever that looks like. So what I like to think about is top values, top priorities, and why does this matter or what else could this be to kind of create that space. And I'll give you an example. In order to make space to get my health in order, I decided to resign from a number of not-for-profit boards. These were any number of wonderfully worthwhile organizations that I love volunteering for and giving back to. And I should volunteer and give back. Like, well, at the same time, if I'm so sick and so tired that I can't enjoy it, my thought was, I am taking up a seat for someone else who feels great and is in a position to do this. So it's not like the organization's going under if I go away. So I would just be honest with people. Hey, you might have observed I'm going bald. My eyes have changed color and I'm fat as fuck, right? Sorry. I need to take care of my health, so I need to step away from this. And people would always say, oh my word, of course. How can I help you? How can I support you? It's in our own heads. We think someone's going to judge us for making a decision to prioritize our own well-being. When at the end of the day, if you just verbalize, look, you know, I've got 42 tests in the next 3 weeks. And as much as I would love to come to your birthday party, I can't pass the test and be there. So let's pick another date to celebrate your birthday. Universally, people will say yes. The enemy for all of that, you know, lives in our own minds and how we're afraid people will perceive us. And trust me, when I went to resign from that first board so that I could make space for my health, I thought I was going to throw up and back out. But after I did one, I felt a little more courageous. I was like, yeah, I'm taking my health back. And the person was so kind, of course. But in my head, they were going to be like, you're a horrible person. You have to keep saving the animals. By the way, it was the zoo board. So I literally was like saving the animals. Another question. Yes.
Aside from the top values exercise, is there any like tips or advice you can give to someone trying to like build a better team?
Yes. A couple of tips on building a better team. First of all, there is a wonderful, well, do you do StrengthsFinder assessment at all? Do you do StrengthsFinder? Okay, you'll eventually get to this thing called StrengthsFinder. What I love about the StrengthsFinder assessment, but even a great question in teaming, is asking someone, what do you love to do when you're not at work? These are always clues about what people gravitate toward naturally, right? So when I ask one of the engineers on my team, what do you love to do? And they tell me online gaming, I figure out how to make some kind of game out of the things that we need to get done, because you clearly love to do that in your free time. So I will give that to you here in your work time, because you will gravitate toward what you love to do naturally. What I like about StrengthsFinder, if you're trying to build a team, is that you get a very clear short synopsis of what people naturally do. And when we're all functioning in our areas of strength, for the most part, what we're doing feels effortless. We think like, well, of course everyone knows how to do this. They don't. But that's how you know when people are in their strengths. It's often in teams, you bump up against people's values, or we're asking people to do something that really isn't what they normally do or gravitate toward. And so they kind of avoid it, right? Or they don't do their best at it, or they have to burn a lot of energy to do it, and it creates conflict with everyone. The other thing too that I find that is incredibly helpful, there is, and I'm a certified coach for this, which is how I found it, but there is a whole body of work called Positive Intelligence. And inside of it, there's and you can look this up, just this Positive Intelligence Saboteur Assessment online. It will take you 5 minutes. It's free. No one gets the results except for you. But what it does is it tells you the inside voice in your head. So, it's the imposter syndrome, you're judgy, you're a hyperachiever, you're a victim, you're hypervigilant, you're a controller, you're a pleaser. So it basically puts a name to the voice inside of someone's head that shows up when they feel like threatened, stressed out, kind of how we all sabotage ourselves. Incredibly helpful to have that information, right? I mean, when I found out that my CEO is a hyper-vigilant person, I'm like, oh, this is the Papa Bear protect everyone. Someone shows up that's gonna bully someone, I mean, he's ready to take them out. It does not matter. Paying customer, member of our board, doesn't faze him, but it pushes that button for him. It's like, no, you will not pick on people, right? I will vigilantly protect and defend. It's like, okay, well, I should probably not push that button in your head then, right? Or know that in these scenarios, we need to balance that out. Super helpful. But I love it. It's worth it. Very insightful. Other questions? Yes. And then I see you back here.
As a woman in a fairly male-dominated field, especially in such a high position, do you ever notice masking your personalities to fit in with the boys, or have you ever noticed them kind of treating you differently because you are a woman in such a powerful position?
Yes, let's unpack that. So we can apply a lot of labels. When you leave here, you'll be the youngest person at your job, or you will be the female, or you will be the different sexual orientation, ethnicity. Fill in whatever label lives in your head that makes you different than everyone else around you, okay? And by the way, I have plenty of white males tell me that now they're the hunted species because everyone's out to get them with all this DIB stuff. So there's equally on that side some set of things that we all carry where we say, someone is, our bias in the situation is, I will go into this believing, and I have done this myself, that someone is going to treat me different because I'm female. Okay, so I want to separate sort of fact from fiction here because I think it's critically important. Fact, I am one of very few female executives in technology. Fact, everyone on the leadership team where I work now that I think about it is male. Fact, there are fewer women going into technology, and fact, tons of women left the technology field during COVID and have never returned. Fact, this will not adjust itself for a very long time. Okay, all facts. Factually, when I walk into a room in any tech gathering, yesterday I was judging Tech Innovation of the Year awards. You look around and go, okay, 2024, still doing this thing where there's 3 of us, or whatever it is. We're a small percentage. I allowed that to be a factor in how I showed up. Now, have I been treated differently because I'm female? Sometimes. have I taken on a series of, I call them blending behaviors? Absolutely. My first time of getting a 360 review or whatever, where it's like all the people who work for you and above you, give you this little feedback, and its feedback is always insightful. But one of the ones I got very upset about was several people commenting on my attire, and it was basically I was managing a massive sales team that was all men, and they didn't like how I dressed. And so I literally went to like Brooks Brothers and all these like very, frankly, male-dominated stores that shrink clothes down for women. And I bought all those clothes and, tried to talk about the stuff they did. You're shaking your head, but yes, you're obviously like not on that plan. But I let that kind of get inside my head. And the reality was, even though I looked different on the outside, it didn't change how I felt on the inside. And it didn't make me any more accepted or respected in those roles. What did was getting results. And so it took a while for me to just kind of let go of that and go, look, they're always going to be, and you could also say, by the way, introvert, extrovert is another huge one in the workplace I get asked about all the time. I'm an introvert, am I going to be discriminated against? I don't drink, am I going to be discriminated against? I mean, to the degree that you believe you are, yes. Are there some truly awful people in corporate America that will treat you differently? Yes. For the most part, more of it lives here than out there. And so what I find instead, and it's taken time to come around to the other side of it, which is I know what my value is and what I can contribute, and I know that I'm good at what I do. So I don't care what label someone wants to put on that, I'm good. And if you're not good with me, I don't need to be here. But it took me like decades of being in the workforce and having a track record of being successful to be like, yeah, no. If I want to wear a pink suit to an all-male dominated event, I do it, The reality was they all still knew I was female no matter what I was wearing. They all still knew I was young no matter what I was talking about. So there was no sense in trying to sort of bluff them on that. So I had to work more on kind of stepping into my own self-confidence of, I know what I can contribute, I know I'm willing to work hard, and I will unapologetically be that. It's hard though, and it takes time. And there are some nasty people, but for the most part, you're thinking about it more than they are most of the time, is kind of what I found out the hard way. After being like, I'm not getting these opportunities because I'm female. They're like, no, it's because you're not doing these 3 behaviors. I'm like, oh, that's insightful, right? Other questions? Yes?
How have your core values shifted, let's say, from the time you're 22, 23, right out of college versus now?
Yes, so 22, 23, definitely all about achieving and just for a myriad of reasons, trying to put as much distance between how I grew up and how I wanted to live, for lack of a better description. So run like a maniac, work all hours at all costs, go all in, not a lot of sleeping, anorexia, I mean, a myriad of things. But like live an adrenaline-driven life full of achievement and keep running as hard and as fast to put as much distance between those 2 things as possible. And some of you can relate to that because some of you are doing it too or will do it if you haven't already started. It's maybe okay for a little bit, but for me it was all about I must achieve as much as possible and be as financially independent as possible because I've got myself to count on and that's it. So run with that. That's not an entirely healthy way to live, but that was the mindset I was in at that point. Then it was try to blend in with these wonderful people. I called them the lunch bunch at my first job. It's like all the people that were like the popular people at my job and they were like these successful people. I was like, well, I'll just be like them. So then my next sort of value was all about like figure out how to blend in at all costs, right? And that kind of worked and keep working hard. And then the next chapter was health, major health setback. And it was like, hang on a minute, this is not living. And so that for me became really the turning point of what really matters and does it matter to me or for some other artificial, I call it a vanity metric instead of a value metric. I mean, you can get all the likes and follows and comments and friends and shares that you want. It's not going to fix anything in here and you're not going to wake up feeling great about your life. So really, I would say for me that like getting super sick was really the turning point of like, I just can't keep running anymore. I'm so tired. Like my body's telling me in every possible way I'm so tired. So yeah, that was a big turning point. I'm grateful, honestly, that came early in my life. I mean, none of my friends were like battling major medical when they were in their 30s, but I was like, I'm glad it happened now because it changed what I was willing to put my best energy toward. and what I was willing to stop doing and relationships that had to go. I just needed to release some things. And I don't think I would have been I wouldn't have such a strong catalyst to do that if I hadn't really gotten so sick and been so sick for so long. I wouldn't wish major medical on anyone. So pick your turning point sooner, but it was a worthwhile teacher in my journey. Yeah. Yes, was there? Yes, sorry.
As a leader, have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a decision or were encouraged to make a decision that didn't align with your values, and how did you deal with that?
Absolutely, yes. Two come to mind. This is a great question about making decisions as leaders that don't align with your values. The first one was having an employee report to me a suspected deeply unethical and behavior by another employee on the same team. And it was already a challenging employee that was doing the unethical behavior. And so I followed the process that you're supposed to do, right? Where you have to sort of tell your boss and you have to get HR involved. In this instance, because of the nature of the scenario, legal was involved. And at the end of the investigation, the HR and legal people came back and said, I mean, we're sort of the rules broken. Absolutely. Is this legal and ethical? No. But at the end of the day, he's such a high performer in sales, we're just going to let it go. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to let it go. And they're like, yeah, you are. So then I had to sort of keep this person on the team. It was like, well, because he's performing so well, and this is sales, and he's like selling a lot, you can't fire him. But you know he's like cheating the company and his coworkers blind. That one was very difficult. Because then he kind of knew he was untouchable, so he got bolder. So the only real recourse I had in that scenario, I mean, I could have changed jobs. That was not what I did. Instead, since it was sales, I started giving him fewer and fewer accounts and a bigger and bigger quota, right? And sort of giving him all the runway in the world to do even more egregious things. So they eventually did fire him, but I had to kind of play the long game on that. That didn't sit well with me because unethical behavior, especially when you cheat your colleagues, I have no patience for that. But they did. And so they made it not my decision. The other one was I was in a situation where I was asked to take over a program by an executive of a company because he believed that something was not above board. And as I got into the situation, it was significantly worse than he thought it was. And in this instance, it was a publicly traded company. The program in question was tied to compensation for people, and it was publicly reported to Wall Street. And it was completely fraudulent, meaning people have signed like reports that go to the Securities Exchange Commission. Like this is, like it's so many levels of bad, I can't even tell you. In that instance, I inherited it. There were a lot of executives when I presented the facts to them that they were mostly scared for themselves. I mean, they didn't want to be exposed. So there was one high integrity executive who was like, okay, I mean, we have to figure this out. And it was a brutal slog. I mean, at certain points I was printing out redundant copies of things because things were magically disappearing from my laptop and storing them in diverse locations across the country. And I mean, it was not ideal. But fortunately, there was one high integrity executive I eventually found that was like, well, all right, here we go. But that one was really stressful, for sure. Yes.
Do you ever like find yourself kind of like regressing back to like the older mindset of like, oh, I have to do this, like it has to be done, like, and I have to keep working?
Yes. I sometimes say that I'm a recovering activity addict. So I have these times where I'm like, I'm doing so great. And then all of a sudden I realize I've said yes to a lot of things that I didn't really want to. And then when they show up on my calendar, I think to myself, I don't want to do this. Why did I say yes to this? Something I have learned over time as my filtering questions that really help when I look at my to-do list and when I look at my calendar. So I always say 3 questions and a bonus question. Because sometimes what happens when you're busy is everything seems equally important, right? It's all urgent. It all has to happen. It all has to happen right now. It all has to be me. I should say yes to all these things. So what I try to do is press pause and just ask myself, does it have to be? Like, does this thing literally have to be, this meeting, this conversation, this to-do item? Does it have to be me? Meaning, do I literally have to be the one to do it? Does it have to be me right now? Meaning, literally, really, is it that urgent? Bonus question, does it have to be a meeting? Because in companies, there are tons of things that don't have to be meetings that people make into meetings. So I will boldly cancel meetings and say, there's no reason to have this meeting. Or I've just sent you a 2-minute video, watch that, and then we're not having a meeting, right? So it's trying to find those small times or like pump the brakes and catch the warning signs for myself sooner. So I try to ask those questions. The other one too, I mean, everyone has a different set of warning signals that things are getting a little out of alignment. But for me, one of my other really telltale signs that I'm overcommitting or I'm committing to things that I don't really want to do but feel obligated to do is I start to resent people who explain to me like how much free time they have and how much fun they're having. And I'm like, well, that'd be nice if I didn't have all these things to do. I'm sure it is fun to watch Netflix. You know what I'm doing? I'm saving the world. And then I kind of start to hate them for having free time. And then I'm like, oh, you're doing too many things or you're living outside of your values. Maybe you should just not do some of those things and then you could read a book and you'd be so happy or take a walk, whatever that is for you. But yeah, I would catch myself doing that like, oh, I'm sure that is nice to have free time to lounge around. I don't have that because I'm doing all the right things. And then it's not very fun. You're not very fun to be with. Or at least I'm not in that mode. But I try to catch it sooner. Yes?
Knowing what you do now, would you have changed any of your university focus?
Would I have changed my university focus? One of the, I mean, I guess I did in the sense that when I was here, right, I changed my major and I serendipitously got into the field that I'm in. What I would do differently, interestingly enough, at this point is the 2 classes that I ended up really needing in life, in my career, that I really had absolutely no interest in when I was here but was required to take. One was in the College of Business. I'm assuming if you have to do still this rule of 9 thing, you have to take that statistics class. I had absolutely no interest in that. I did a lot of daily news crossword puzzles. Yeah, it turns out I needed that a lot because I did customer research for years. It turns out, you know, knowing the standard deviation of something turns out to be very important if you do those sorts of jobs. And if I'd paid attention, I probably would have had, you know, I could have been a better leader to those people, frankly, but I wouldn't have had to study as much on my own time as an adult. And then the one from my master's degree, interestingly correlated, was research methods, because at least at across the street, every master's student is required to take a research methods class. Maybe that's universally true. I was like, this is useless. And then I, you know, spent probably more than a third of my career doing market research. And I was like, weirdest thing, should have learned how to write a survey when I was there. Could have saved myself a lot of time instead of watching YouTube videos and taking classes and getting certifications while I was in my career. So that would probably be a couple of things. I wouldn't have changed majors. I mean, I feel like my majors certainly served me, but I had no idea I was going to need those classes and that I probably wasn't going to turn out to be like a crossword puzzle competitor. So I probably could have done fewer of those during class and maybe more internalizing that data. But I mean, you don't always know that then. I also like now that you have so many more international study options, right? I mean, I kind of set up my own thing. But yeah, and you get to do so many great, or you have opportunities for lots of hands-on projects. There weren't quite as many of those. It wasn't as much of the focus of the university at that point. So I'd just get as many real experiences as you could as well. Any others? Yes, go for it.
Do you have any kind of mantras or affirmations that you say to yourself throughout the day or the week that kind of help you ground yourself and get reconnected?
Yes. So do I have some mantras? Yes, I have a number of them. And I will tell you, one of my sort of lenses, I think it was going into maybe last year, was what would happen if every decision I made, I filtered through the thought process, I have enough, I have done enough, I am enough. That was very transformative because at a certain point, some of the things that you take on, you think, I should do this. It's because you're trying to fill in some sort of perceived shortfall, like I'm not enough. And if I just do this thing, it will fill this hole in my soul or whatever. I'll get this approval, acceptance, whatever. But that was a great filter. Now and I continue to think about that, what I focus on now is the universe works in my favor. possibility always finds me. Those are two big ones for me. Because you can do lots of right things, and there will be times in your life where it's just not clicking, like things aren't coming together. You've probably had some of those times, right? It's like, oh, I'm trying so hard and nothing is working out. When I step back and look at it in the macro sense, it's like things always kind of come together. You just sort of miss it when you're in the details of it. So that's very grounding for me. The universe works in my favor. Possibility always finds me. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Who was the medical center that got your diagnosis correct, and what kind of physician was it?
Yes, so Dr. Kevin Logan, Fishers, Indiana, Logan Institute for Health and Wellness, 317-598-4325. Use my name if you would like to go there. And he is an MD, so Western medicine, but he has tons of Eastern medicine training and philosophies and wisdom as well. So yes, that was him. And they have a whole holistic practice. I mean, they have a nutritionist and like physical therapy, and it's kind of a whole integrative practice. Yeah.
You should watch if you didn't know Letterman speaker this fall. Her name's Victoria Arlen.
I did. I read her book. Dr. Paige Turner, the dean from across the street, gave me her book. And in fact, so one of my things I love to do is orchestrating some of the stuff like we were doing with values, and I host retreats for people. So I have this group of women that I'm taking through a year-long experience. In December, we did a vision board night to set the stage for the new year. And I gave them all a copy of her book because after I read it, I was like, this is amazing. I mean, you can do the impossible, right? So that was in their gift bag, and many of them have read it now. But she was amazing. Yeah, love it. Our minds are very powerful. Very powerful. Any other questions? It was awesome to meet all of you. Go crush it in life. Be good Ball State students. Did somebody else have one more? Was there? Yes. Yeah, one more. I never worry about my job security with AI because a whole bunch of people don't understand it.